It's Friday, March 16th, 2017. Welcome to Raging Chicken's Half-Ass Out the Coop podcast. That's right. I'll tell you why I'm just saying that in just a second here. I guess this is our St. Patty's Day edition. This is Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken Press. Each week I talk to our Capitol muckraker-in-chief, Sean Kitchen, about the good, the bad, and the ugly in state and national politics. And the reason that I'm a little bit annoyed right now is, number one, if you guys have been following us on Instagram and Facebook this week, you know that my computer crapped out this week. And it has made, and this is my spring break, which I was supposed to be getting a whole lot of work done on particular projects and all this stuff. And it's made the week hellish. Most of the sound for this show is on that computer, right? And, you know, it is in the capable hands of people at Computer Wizards out there in Kutztown, Pennsylvania. They just do great work, and I fully trust them with my computer. But so we've had to basically rig something up here today. I'm going off my laptop. I don't even have a hard wire on here. You can hear it in my sounds it is right now. And Sean and I basically just got into a discussion of what's happening in the Trump administration and the school walkouts this week, right? And then Sean starts waving his hands, right? Wait. I'm like, what? I'm right, you know, just kind of closing out this one point I was making about what was going on with guns and stuff. And Sean's like, wait a minute. Is this recording? Are you recording? And we look down, and no, it wasn't even freaking recording. Right now, normally this would be just like a complete pain in the ass, right? And then we would have just wasted 20 minutes. But Sean has got to be someplace, right? In about a half an hour now. And so, like, just because I didn't press the damn button, we just wasted all that time, right? So, Sean, that was a great discussion to have with you. But
so if a tree falls in the woods and no one hears it,
yeah, right, exactly. Did the discussion? Yeah, right. Did I just call out the gun nuts, and did we just talk about toxic masculinity, and did we talk about the insanity of the Trump thing and the coming junta? Sure, we did, maybe.
But it doesn't exist, so you never really know.
Right, so we don't know. We have no record to prove to you that we actually just had that conversation, and we're almost kind of running out of time here. So just we give you kind of the brief rundown here, and just remind everybody, say, one, we're going to have to come back and do something else about the school walkouts. Maybe we'll do that in our show next week, because it's been absolutely incredible. And on the 24th, of course, is the national protest day in Washington, D.C. So we'll come back and talk about some of the implications that are there. It's hitting me home right here, because my school district in Pennridge School District, about 200 kids are going to be suspended, or not suspended, I'm sorry, going to be forced to have detention. That's also true up in Allentown, students who walked out. So we'll talk about that a little bit. We'll come back about the insanity of the Trump administration. But we're going to basically focus today on, say, the Conor Lamb victory. We're going to talk about what Sean's going to be doing at the state capitol today. And we're going to talk about, I'll give you a little preview of the Westchester whistleblower case and why that's going to be important. If we have time, I'll also get in a little bit for a last call, but we'll kind of mush it all together today, where Donald Trump is, talked about wanting to introduce a Space Force, right? Because we got an Air Force. We got the Navy and the Air Force, and we got the Marines, so I have a Space Force. It's kind of a good idea, right? Yeah. Was out at Free Will last night. Free Will and great food from Down to Earth Cafe, some corned beef and cabbage ahead of St. Patrick's Day, which is great stuff. Want to welcome aboard our newest contributor, Anthony Downing. His first piece, Greg Edwards, running people-powered campaign for Lehigh Valley's new 7th district, was just published this week. Great piece. Anthony is, he's been working with the Edwards campaign, or kind of following them really closely. He was on strike as a member, the union member who was on strike at the Just Born plant this past year, if you recall that one. We reported on that. We had some direct reporting from the ground of the strike lines. I was out there for that. So that's pretty cool. Also want to kind of give a shout out to Shariah Bauer. I'm sure that you all know her work. She's been doing fantastic writing for us. Great commentary, on the ground reports for like the Women's March and different actions in Philadelphia. Shariah is going to be taking a bit of a break from Raging Chicken as she concentrates on getting set for a PhD program. Like, super best of luck to you, Shariah. And we hope that, when you get settled, you think about coming on back, because, people love your stuff, justifiably so. So, I want to remind everybody to tune in to the Rick Smith Show on Free Speech TV this and every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern. I'll be there giving the weekly resistance report once again this week, where we talk about the student walkouts. We talk about the implications of the West Virginia strike and the potential Oklahoma strike and what's happening in Arizona and Kentucky when it comes to teacher organizing. You can stream the show live at freespeech.org, and you can also tune in on the Dish Network, DirecTV, or through the Free Speech TV app on Roku. If you missed the show, just go to ricksmithshow.com and click on the Free Speech TV icon in the sidebar, or just go to freespeech.org and look for all the shows that are archived on their site. Want to remind everybody, if you like what you hear, you want to support Pull No Punches Progressive Media, you want to keep the media in the movement and the movement in the media, well, become a member of Raging Chicken for those $5 a month. Simply go to patreon.com/rcpress and choose your membership level. Any level counts, folks. Any level counts. So, Sean, yeah, just wasted a whole bunch of time this morning. I'm sorry about that, man.
It's okay. It seems like you're having a rough week.
It's been like that. You know, I was supposed to be catching up on my grading this week. I was supposed to be I had some great audio that I want to get edited and up. And all of that went to hell Monday night. You know, I made the mistake. I blame myself for this, Sean, because I sit there and I say, you know what? I give myself, you know, after our podcast on Friday, right? I did some work on Friday. So, you know what? I'm going to take a few days and just relax and just spend time with my kids, enjoy the fact that it's my spring break, all that kind of stuff. And then I'll get to work on Monday. Right. So I spent part of the day on Monday working, and then my computer craps out on Monday night. Right. It's just been freaking a disaster. So whatever. So whatever.
Editing some different types of audio and video files.
Different types of oh yeah, whatever, man. No, what the guy said at the Computer Wizards, he basically said, I didn't realize this, but the hard, basically what he said, that it looks like the hard drive crapped out, and he said the hard drives. He said that, you know, now these hard drives, the Western Digital hard drives, that they have like a life expectancy of 4 to 5 years. Which I didn't realize it was that like little. So see, that's what they expect it going to be. And I think what they're going to do instead is they're going to put a solid state drive back into the computer, which will be good. You know, he said it's going to be super fast and all that. And then the drive luckily is still under warranty. So I'm going to when that comes in, the other drive comes in 6 to 8 weeks. We're going to put that one in too. So we're going to have an additional terabyte of storage in there. So
nice. So a lot of podcast material could be saved on the computer.
He thinks so. He thinks
and a lot of video for the camera. You're going to be
totally. That's exactly it, right? I was going to be. You know what? I was loading this, and it's the last thing I'll say about this, and we'll actually get to the important stuff.
I was going to say you should also. I would recommend just buying a hard drive, like a removable hard drive.
I have one,
and just keep that, like, back it up everything on that, because you don't.
Well, that's what. Well, you know what it is. It's like I didn't. Here's the problem. I have material. I back it up. I have like a 1 terabyte kind of external drive where all my photos, and then I kind of periodically go and kind of move over my audio files from a past podcast and things like this. So I've got a bunch of that, but I haven't done that since 2018 started. So, you know, most of my photos and stuff are still on the external drive. That's where I save them. But there were a couple files there. But the audio stuff that I normally use for the weekly podcast stuff are all on there, and especially some of the new audio that I had just recorded. But whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But crazy. And I just, what I was going to do, what I was doing Monday night, right? That what rate is it crapped out. So I bought with my new camera, right? So I got the new camera, the video package. It's like the Canon T7i with the Rode microphone, because I wanted to be just like Sean. So I wanted to look like Sean getting pushed out of officers' doors.
So actually, the funny thing is about that, I had a state rep email me yesterday.
Yeah.
He sent me a link to an event that maybe actually got asked to shoot for someone, the gerrymandering guy. So
yeah.
Been doing a lot of video stuff, with this camera. I'm actually looking to get a new camera. I'll talk about that a few months from now. But but a state rep was like, don't get arrested this time.
Yeah.
I was like, what? He's like, didn't you get jammed up the last time? I'm like, no, but I almost did.
Right, exactly.
don't get jammed up in Metcalf's office.
Oh no, man, I tell you. No, but I did some okay because I'll let it. Let's see. One good thing about this is that I was able to rearrange my little kind of studio environment a little bit there, and because one of the things I had going through my mind there, and this is the last thing I'll say before, and I've been doing some, just some kind of YouTube research right on the camera, kind of listening to different. People talk about how they use the camera, lighting stuff, things that you do just to kind of get your head around this stuff, or I was getting my head around this stuff. And so one of the things that I thought would be kind of cool, especially for our members on our Patreon site, is that we could do a little bit of kind of like studio shots for the show. Maybe kind of like pre-show stuff or things like this, so we could have like a Facebook Live thing going for a little bit. I don't know, just playing around with a bunch of stuff like this. And one of this one YouTuber where she was talking about her video editing software, and I've got one, and she basically was saying like all in for Adobe Premiere, right? As a video editing software. And so I did some research. I said, oh, that sounds really cool.
And if you do that, you should just get Lightroom.
Yeah,
I mean, like I would highly recommend taking your pictures in RAW files, shooting in RAW with just so you can like change them in post-production.
Right.
Like Lightroom is really easy to use, and you just have to find a way to like do some basic edits to the photos.
Yeah.
Like the highlights and stuff like that, but you have to keep them within a certain range. You got to keep that like little histogram in the middle, nice little bell curve.
Right.
Going. But I mean, like if you're going to get the Adobe Premiere, which is like $10 a month.
No. That was the thing. Okay. Is that this is why I got Adobe Premiere. Is like I bought it because they had with the camera, there was a special that they I didn't know they did this now. They basically have a version of it which does not require the subscription. Right. So it would cost me like, I don't know, like $25 or something like that for $30, I think, with the camera. Right. As a package. So I was like, okay, let me give this a shot and see if it's worth it. So anyways.
Nice.
So, my computer crapped out. So yeah. So yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say there was this special election this week.
Yeah, that's it. Let's get to the good stuff. So yeah, I mean, this is like I think Sean and I were kind of back and forth with each other Tuesday night till like 1:30 in the morning or something like this.
Pretty much. I mean, it was I was talking to someone who used to work in the House, basically said pretty much Republicans are going to be shitting buckets at this point after what happened Tuesday night. I think we're already seeing some of the blowback here in Pennsylvania. Costello, Congressman Costello from the who has a new district now, is now mulling retirement because he's probably going to lose. And a lot of Republicans are rather run for the door than losing an election. And it brings me keep on bringing back to this point that a couple points here. My main point about this is. This is what happens when we have fair maps, and not highly gerrymandered maps. Yes, Conor Lamb won a district that was highly gerrymandered. He would not have won if this was a general election, right? And Tim Murphy was still there. He would not have won, right? But he won the special election mainly because this district was so gerrymandered, and Republicans like Rick Saccone and others have gotten accustomed to not having to campaign because of how drawn the lines are, like how fucked up the lines are, and they still and Conor Lamb was able to pull it off. Right. There was this discussion on computer. Steve Essick threw a tweet out there. Does this mean that the Supreme Court jumped the gun on the gerrymandering decision? Absolutely not.
No.
Because they cheated to get those lines in place.
No, exactly, right. And the PA, I mean, if you look at the PA18th, right, which is what the special election was, and ironically, right, this is a district, this is going to go away, right? I mean, this district is going to go away in
a couple months,
right? In a couple months when the new maps are going in. But so, and I think that's one of the reasons, though, that I think this got such national attention to as well, in part because it was in one of these districts, right, where the gerrymandering was so heavy to basically guarantee Republican victories in here. That despite that, with a super ground game, right, and Conor Lamb being just an excellent candidate, we can get into his politics at another point. Like, I don't mean it's like he's the guy is on the progressive left vanguard of the party or something like this, but just he ran a super campaign and had a fantastic ground game. The unions got in the game instead of kind of like, Trump, maybe he's not that bad. Nope. They kind of are seeing the writing on the wall now. They got off their haunches and kind of got behind Conor Lamb and kind of like, man, had a huge turnout there. And so, there's your bellwether. I mean, this is what you've been talking about for a while, but, that's amazing. And so if you actually have fair elections, right, exactly your point, fair elections and kind of these new maps come into play, is that we're going to see more of this kind of stuff statewide.
Yeah. You're always seeing it. Charlie Dent saw the writing on the wall. He got out. His new district is pretty much a toss-up. The district he lives in now with the PA7, where Greg Edwards is at, who I think will win that race. But you have Costello in Delaware, Chester County. Chester County pretty much went blue for the first time ever in like 300 years. This past, ever since the row offices were in place, Chester County went Democrat for the first time in like 150, 200 years. These are this district went Democrat for the first time since Kritz was in there, but there's up until Kritz, Mark Kritz and Murtha were the only two Democrats to hold that district since like the 1870s.
Mm-hmm.
There's historical significance there. I mean, that part of southwestern Pennsylvania voted heavily for Mondale, when Reagan took the country, won everywhere. It shows you what happens when you run on a populist message, right? Yes, Conor Lamb's not the vanguard progressive bastion out there, but he ran on protecting the Obamacare, the ACA. He ran on protecting Social Security. He ran on protecting Medicare and Medicaid. He ran against the tax cuts. I mean, he ran on a pretty economically populist progressive campaign. I mean, yeah, he's for gun rights. One of his ads had him shooting off an AR-15, which, okay, might not have people be happy with that. And, he's like, yes, I'm pro-life, but I'm not going to vote against Roe v. Wade.
Right. He did. He kind of pulled out the Joe Biden stuff.
Yeah. And and he's pretty much what a Southwestern Democrat is. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And he won.
Yep.
And he ran a really good campaign in doing it. I mean,
I think one of the kind of most important moments for me, to seeing how he brought this campaign together, is he's a Marine, right? Or he's a former Marine, right? He served as a Marine, and again, you have the motto of the Marines, and he said this in his victory speech on Tuesday night or early Wednesday morning, that Marine, you leave no one behind, right? But then what he did in that next move is that he took that message about where he comes out. Right. And then he started talking about organized labor. Right. And started talking about unions, about how basically unions don't leave anyone behind. Right. That they were all in this together, and that these towns that they live in, right, have been left behind. Right. Pulling up the Fetterman argument. So the way he synthesized a bunch of kind of the ethos of that area was pretty amazing.
Yeah, I know. He basically said unions built this area.
Yep, exactly.
Which he might not have been that hard for labor during the campaign, but the speech he gave Tuesday night or Wednesday morning was pretty like a Sherrod Brown type speech.
Yeah, it was something else. I'm telling you, it was something else.
It also shows you how nuts Rick Saccone is.
Yeah, well, that's exactly it, right? I mean, we should never ever forget that, as great as a campaign that Conor Lamb ran, right, and as good a candidate as he was, is that he was running against Godly Heritage himself, right, Rick Saccone. And Rick Saccone, even the Republican Party and the Trump administration were kind of openly criticizing him as being lackluster, lacking personality, having no ground game, not doing any work, being basically lazy. Which has been cultivated by these gerrymandered maps. But, so he was not exactly the best example of a good Republican game, despite the nearly $10 million that were poured in from the, dark money groups.
And that's also another thing it shows you. You can win by being outspent.
Yep.
If you run a ground game, you have a campaign, you can win without being and you know, it's you look at the seats. Conor Lamb's new district is pretty much a 50-50 district. You know, it's not like an R11, which this district was. You know, the Pennsylvania can give Democrats at least 1/3 of the seats they need to flip the House. Pennsylvania and Texas can give Democrats half the seats they need to flip the House. And think about that. It's
there you go,
and,
man.
and the thing about like you know, the thing about having Conor Lamb in there besides a Republican, you know, which some people the day after in the Republican side, oh well, he basically just elected a Republican. You know what happens with people you have like Conor Lamb in there? You know, he's one less vote. That's one more committee vote you have.
That's right.
You know, yes, he might be a blue dog Democrat, but you know, you build up a base, you flip the House, that he now becomes a committee vote stopping legislation.
Right. Well, look, the numbers matter, right? And this is something the Republicans have understood for a long time. It actually matters to be in the majority, right? I mean, the fact that, I mean, this is where, again, this is not to say Conor Lamb is the kind of candidate we want to be running everywhere, right? I mean, you know, he's not, would not be my first choice if I was living in a perfect world, but
he was the best candidate for that district.
Exactly. Well, you know, maybe there's other ones that could be better, but right now that was it. He was perfect for kind of this move forward. And as much as you see the kind of like the DLC centrist Democrats basically getting on the national media on Wednesday, you had Tom Perez coming out basically saying, see, you know, everyone's coming back to the Democratic Party. No, no. And in that district, a ground game and a strong candidate, and it shows you actually what you do when you actually run a good candidate in a district that you formally wrote off
since 2012.
Exactly. So, you know, this is not like Conor Lamb is not the model for national Democrats, right? Conor Lamb is the model for that district.
And he's the model in how you run a campaign. Like tactically.
In a district like that, right? I mean,
but I also mean like knocking on doors, getting a ground game going. You know, he's showing people how to run an actual campaign. You know, you motivate the people in your district. Like you do the small stuff. Like people were saying he had an impeccable ground game for the past 4 or 5 months.
Yep.
You know, I mean, he was a 33-year-old no one at that point.
Yep. And he did the work, right? And you know, it wasn't just knocking on doors of of just kind of people who would get them out to vote. But you know, he spent time with groups, he spent time with the unions, he spent time with community organizations that were kind of bringing this stuff forward. So that's awesome. You know, and again, we're going to see the same kind of stuff that's with Greg Edwards down in the new PA7th too as well. I mean, his ground game, all reports are his ground game was just fantastic. So
yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see in that. I'm looking forward to it because if he wins the primary, he can definitely win that election.
I think so. I'm definitely
the wave is on.
The wave is on, right? The real wave, right? The wave that people are making, not the the forces of nature wave that Tom Perez and the
tides go in, tides go out.
Right, exactly.
The best build.
Exactly.
Tides come in, tides come out. I don't know how.
I don't know. It just happens, right? Oh my God! Look, the tide's coming in. Wait, it's our time. No.
But
get your surfboard. So crazy. So you got, I mean, I know we got to cut this kind of short today because I screwed up the recording and everything once again. But so, and part of that is because you've got a fun little event that you're going to be attending today, assuming that it goes off.
Yes, it goes off with a bang. Pretty much. So there's going to be a gun rally up at the Capitol today. A bunch of people from the Pennsylvania Patriot Movement, aka 3%ers, and a couple of 3%ers, which is the anti-government militia groups that participated in Charlottesville. They're having their little gun fetish rally up on the Capitol today, where anywhere from like 50 to 100, 200 of these people are going to coming up with their AR-15s. And these are the same people that were walking around Harrisburg last June in their army fatigues, making sure nothing happened with the March Against Sharia that happened, the one of the alt-right marches out here. So should be fun. I'm looking to get some really good pictures of these people with their guns. This is Pennsylvania. We're still cleaning our Bibles and guns, said Rick Saccone.
Yeah, well, look where he's doing right now.
I tell you one thing, a bunch of people are pissed off. They have to deal with him for the next 8 months. They
Oh,
thought he
man.
was going to be a problem.
You thought what?
They thought he was going to be DC's problem with this terrible towel.
Yeah. Nope. He's wiping up his own mess right now is what he's doing with that terrible towel.
He's probably sticking it in his mouth and waterboarding himself.
Yeah, exactly. Right. That's exactly with this picture. Did you see that video, by the way, still like where they interview, like they went into his office and talked about all the weapons that he collects?
No.
Did you see this? It was a Penn Live video, and it was like the weirdest. He's like, yeah, I've got a dagger from Israel, and I've got some maces and axes, like, and their cameras panning around his office with all these like medieval weapons of like war. like, oh my God. It was just like, of course. And he's got his like big mustache and kind of like, that glazed over half, like, nuts look on his thing. It just,
this is the person they picked.
Yeah. There you go.
The worst candidate possible.
Oh boy. Well, yeah, no, but they, whatever.
He has to come to Harrisburg, collect his per diem so his wife can eat.
Yeah, well,
did you see the pictures of his wife the whole entire time?
Yeah.
The lady with the shawl.
Yep.
Talking about like respect to the flag.
Yep. Exactly. Nothing like it, man. Nothing like it. So one thing I wanted to mention is that I know people saw reports on this is this Pennridge School District, what happens to be the school district in which I live. They in following up the walkouts on Wednesday, about 225 students decided to kind of walk out. Like what they did is the school district, they did something that we saw at some school districts across the country, and they basically try to contain the walkouts, right? Contain them not by trying to shut them down, but providing a gym, right, where they're going to go and students can gather for an assembly for 20 minutes or something like this before they go back to school and blah, blah, blah. And I get kind of the logic there, right? They're trying to say, be safe and make sure you kind of allow students to do this. But yeah, at the same time, it's also, in my view, like when I heard that it was going on, I said, this is like a strategy of control, right? Is that you want to contain what this could be, right? So you want to give like simulated civic action, not actual civic action, right? So and I have to say there were like 800 students basically, kind of went to one of these assembly, but about 225 students at the high school, Pennridge High School, were like, we're not going to be contained, right? We're pissed, right? And we're going to walk out, right? It happens to be one of my neighbor's kids, was one of those kids. And
the Scottish guy?
What's that?
The Scottish guy?
Yeah. But so goes and so basically those 225 students, right, are now going to be given detention, right? And from what we understand, it's going to be a Saturday detention, right? And there was a notice that was released from the superintendent, Radigan, and she was basically saying, the students understood ahead of time what the consequences are going to be. So we're just kind of, has nothing to do with what they were saying. It has to do with the fact that they broke the rules and blah, 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 right? That same kind of rationalistic discourse that we see all over the place. And so now these students are going to give detention. So I've got an email in where I'm just going to say, hey, you know what? Since you're all behind the civic action and things like this, and you like learning opportunities, how about you let me come to their detention session, right? And I can interview some of these students to talk about what was actually going on, right? And why they were willing to kind of like have to deal with kind of detention. And for what I understand, there's some parents that are kind of like, are pissed off at this action. So their parents are planning on going and doing detention with their kids, right? So this could be potentially really interesting. And so the story actually made it onto made it to like the morning call. It was Lehigh Valley Live kind of picked this up. It even made it into Newsweek this week. This is going to be kind of interesting to see how this plays itself out, because I think this is going to be that threshold that you got to reach, right? This is what we saw in West Virginia. This is what we saw in Oklahoma. And with those walkouts is that you have to kind of, be willing to take those risks and say, yes, I can accept these consequences. But then it doesn't mean that, well, because there was a rule and you were told what the consequence was going to be, then therefore you just like, okay, I've got my consequences. Okay, I guess I got to do this. No, you fight that too.
And
right?
also, like, the ACLU was putting out a bunch of stuff that schools cannot punish you for speech, even they have to punish you by the guidelines. And I would just try to go into that and fighting. Well, where in this book does it say Saturday detention? Whose guidelines are these? You're going to make my kids come in on Saturday morning and ruin my Saturday because of this?
Yep. Well, and there's some schools and like I think South Carolina maybe is one of them, where students had to do detention on Thursday, Friday, and the following Monday. So it wasn't a Saturday one, but it was like 3 days of detention for walking out of school, right? And so again, this is how movements are built. Right, is that you start to learn that these rules that are put into place, and there's that they're just rules, and the rules very often, yes,
they start singing "Solidarity Forever."
There you go, man. That's what I'm talking about.
In the detention hall, I'm sure that will get the superintendent pissed.
Yeah, I'll bring in my like old school boombox with Billy Bragg, and we're gonna be playing it out there. We'll do a union teaching. How's that?
Yeah.
While we've got you here,
what did I see? Speaking about Solidarity Forever and dealing with the consequences. Couple of there was a Spencer speech last week. Did you see this?
No.
Spencer was speaking at somewhere in Michigan. A bunch of white nationalists showed up, and a bunch of Antifa showed up, and of course there were street brawls going on. And there's a bunch of like Antifas who were cuffed up, sitting in the back of the auditorium. And there's like 20 of them, all got arrested, and they're all singing Solidarity Forever as they're sitting down on the ground with their hands cuffed inside like the school gymnasium, like the bowels of the gymnasium. And the journalists are like, oh my God, they're singing Solidarity Forever after they just got into a street brawl with the fascists. Who are these animals? The movements are built.
That's crazy. Oh, it's crazy. Well, listen, one thing I want to kind of put on people's radar too as well before we have to cut this short is that if you recall, I mentioned this a little bit last week about the follow-up to the Bunces report. And I've been checking in on this about this story. If people may remember this. This is from back in May 2015. Okay. This is a piece I reported on then about some budgeting stuff was happening at Westchester University, particularly the director, the university's director of budget and financial planning, this woman by the name of Colleen Bradley. Here's a little bit of background. Let me read a little bit from this piece, right? So this is how I'll begin it. Westchester University's director of budget and financial planning, Colleen Bradley, filed a lawsuit in U.S. District Court last Thursday. So this would make it like, May 15th or something like that, alleging that she was wrongly terminated for blowing the whistle about the university's false and misleading budgets. The lawsuit alleges that Westchester University administrators purposely misrepresented the university's budget in order to increase its funding from the Commonwealth, positioned WCU to secede from the PA state system of higher education, and increase leverage in negotiations with faculty and staff unions. The 62-page complaint, supported by multiple email exchanges between Bradley and her superiors at Westchester and the Pennsylvania State System of Higher Education's Office of the Chancellor, documents Bradley's repeated attempts to raise objections to the university's accounting practices. Despite receiving excellent reviews and praise for her diligence, the lawsuit alleges that the university administration eventually terminated her for exposing the university's fraudulent budgeting practices. So that's a little bit of the background. And, I read that entire complaint. What's remarkable about it is that, basically she realized that there was what she claims, right? And I think the evidence is clear. There were fraudulent budgeting practices that were taking place, and she refused to go along with it because she thought it was unethical, right? If not illegal. And so she realized that she was getting pushback and pressure to kind of like, go with the party line and report these kind of false numbers. And so she began documenting exchanges she had. And she basically had all the emails and all the exchanges between, like I said in there, the local administration and the statewide administration to show, shine a light on these practices. The importance of that for our purposes here is that, well, twofold. One is that this exactly the kind of stuff that I've been reporting on with the Raging Chicken Press since 2011 about this kind of this dual dual accounting methods that have been utilized, these off-balance sheet financing schemes that have been utilized by PASHI and other institutions of higher education as a way of basically instituting shock doctrine policies and austerity at the universities, cutting faculty members, shutting down programs, all the while kind of garnering more resources for special projects and buildings and things like this. So the reason why I'm kind of bringing it back right now is because I had a question about what would have happened to this case. And it turns out that this case has just been denied by the U.S. District Court. And there's a longer story that I can't get into right now simply because we're running short on time, but you're going to be seeing this in the pages of Raging Chicken Press, is that basically this case has dual implications. Number one is that what happens when someone exposes fraud, right? And what are the consequences, right? Because what we've seen through the Bunces report, as you know, we saw at Kutztown University, that PASHI continues to do exactly the same thing that Colleen Bradley documented in that case. But secondarily, and just as important, if not more importantly, is that basically that her case is, I'll leave it like this. The case is a whistleblower case, right? Where she was speaking out against us and fired for it, right? Now, what the lower court found, and now what the U.S. District Court affirmed, was they gave a summary judgment, which means that instead of it being a full hearing, right, that it was a kind of a panel of judges, a panel of 3 judges, one of whom, by the way, was one of the finalists for the Supreme Court nomination by Donald Trump. So in this, they basically said because she was speaking as part of her job, she is not given a whistleblower protection. What's ironic, or not even ironic about that, what's astounding about that is that her direct boss said in a deposition, right, that what she was saying was not part of her regular job. Right. So they have evidence through a sworn deposition from her boss saying that what she was doing was not part of her regular job, that she was not supposed to, basically being as part of doing it. She was operating outside of her job. So under Supreme Court law, she should have been given she should have been given whistleblower protection, defense of First Amendment speech. But this case has now basically raised a red flag, to use that word, about what is going to happen in terms of whistleblower protection going forward. So they have 90 days basically to file a case directly to the Supreme Court, basically arguing for a hearing there. And and the reason why we're going to dig in on this with Raging Chicken is because this could potentially set national standards limiting whistleblower protection for people coming forward reporting fraud and abuse. So this is an important case, folks. So what I'd encourage you to do, go back and check out a reporting of Colleen Bradley's case, Westchester University. That's May 20th, 2015 is when I wrote that piece about it. There's some follow-up discussions there too as well. And then look for forthcoming interviews and discussion about this case because it's going to be an important one. So there's that. Well, Sean, let's close this thing out for today because I know you got to get out of here. We already ran past the time we wanted to. So any news and blues to close us out for the week?
Matt Brie from Commonwealth Foundation blocked me on Twitter Wednesday morning.
Dum, dum, dum. You heard it here first, folks.
Brie, however you say it.
He's the guy with the nice shiny head, right?
Yes. And the mustache.
And the mustache.
Yeah. He tweeted out that he was putting the spin factor out there, basically saying that Conor Lamb was a Republican and Democrats just elected a Republican. And I said all of this while the Commonwealth Foundation useful dope loses. Useful dope in that situation is Rick Saccone, because Rick Saccone, is at every single Commonwealth Foundation press conference trying to destroy the world. And he deleted that tweet within 5 minutes and blocked me.
There you go, man. There you go.
I guess he didn't like being called out on his shit.
No, billionaire-backed
Koch brother
Alec shopping like ball-headed freak can't take a little
carpet bagging,
you name
Michigan native person who works for these organizations that are registered in Oklahoma and trying to destroy working class life in Pennsylvania. Doesn't like it when a Pennsylvanian calls him out on his bullshit. Well, I'll tell you one thing.
Yeah.
I guess I'm not going to be going on his Brews and Views podcast anytime soon.
Oh man, I knew that was a bucket list thing for you too.
I know it was up the top of it. So I just got a couple final parting words for Briette. Fuck off.
There you go. Dun, dun, dun. There it is. All right, so a couple real quick things, folks. I'm going to put together. If I get my computer back this next week, I'm going to have to put together just a sound file that I'll upload. For folks. So I had some really good sound this week. In particular, Betsy DeVos gave like a disaster of an interview on 60 Minutes last week. That was like it was actually unnerving and kind of uncomfortable to watch. What a moron she is. And moron is a word, not my word. Alyssa Gilbert, the woman who played the girl when she was a girl. She played the lead character, Laura, on Little House on the Prairie. Yeah, she was asked about Betsy DeVos because she's a Michigan native too. Betsy DeVos, and her comment was she's a moron and needs to go. So we had some great sound from that, which we'll get to. I want to give a shout out to the folks at Free Will. I was out at Free Will last night with some friends. They had some food and some great stuff on tap. Got to taste my first Soul Artisan Ale. They had this one. It was called what the heck was that? Cream and Sugar. They had it on there on nitro. It's really nice. It wasn't exactly what I expected. It was kind of like it's an oatmeal milk stout kind of thing. So very mild, but very nice. Kind of had some little Nilla wafer kind of tendency to it. But the folks at Down to Earth Cafe were out there with some food. They had some great corned beef and cabbage. So shout out to Ryman and the folks at Down to Earth Cafe and Free Will. That was some great stuff that night. Good night to be there. I want to remind everybody that this weekend they are going to have one edition St. Patrick's Day. They're going to have, all sorts of great stuff going on there on Saturday night, tomorrow night. They also have a coupon if you go to their Facebook page that you can get a 30% off Lyft ride, so you don't have to drive. And yes, believe it or not, there's Lyft in Percy. Can you believe that? It's Lyft ride, so you're not going to drive drunk or anything like that. And then on Sunday is going to be their Sour Sunday #2 from 12 to 8. It's going to be sours, saisons, spontaneous, wild ales, and all things funky. So check it out. So Sean, anything else before you gotta get out of here?
No, nope. I'm pretty good. I said I need to be said.
All right, there you have it. All right, everybody. This is Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken Press. I'm sorry that I destroyed this day and it was an abbreviated thing, but I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of people gonna be very happy that it's not so long, right? Including Sean. Right? All right, Sean. Can't wait to see some pics from the day's events. Stay safe, man.
All right, thank you very much.
All right, this is Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken Press. Remember, become a member of Raging Chicken Press at patreon.com/RCPress. Have a safe and happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody. See ya!